until, and actually what's really interesting is we were having a conversation with a very influential member of APTI, Carol Lindgren, and she was mentioning that in her memory, back in the 90s, 80s, and 90s, the person who really brought cognitive functions into the type community in a big way, not in like a nod toward them way, but like, no, this is something that is intrinsic to the system, was Dr. John Beebe, who is one of our coaches. And his name is bandied around like crazy. And so people are like, well, I don't like his model, or I love his model, or whatever. But what I thought was fascinating is that she was indicating that, no, he was important for just saying functions are something all of us should be paying way more attention to. So we have John to thank for functions now being an intrinsic part of type jargon.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a nod to John.
We're going to get her on the show at some point to tell us all this history.
That's right.
And the juicy details of how this went down.
Oh yeah. I totally want to interview Carol here in the studio and get some of that history. So you can get a lot just from the dichotomies, but once you start introducing cognitive functions, which is now a very common thing, before it was really uncommon, but now it's super common. And now at the cognitive function level, now you're not just understanding these stereotypes and understanding how we're different. Now we're like, oh, I'm actually a complex dynamic of things happening inside of me.
You mean I'm like introvert and extrovert inside of me? Whoa, that kind of stuff.
Exactly. Well, and then also, again, like I have extroverted intuition or exploration as my dominant or driver, and so do you as an ENFP, but we're using it totally differently. It looks really different. So what's the function versus what is my use of it? And then what's my function preferences combination and how they influence each other versus yours, but also just what's happening inside of me. So cognitive functions are this beautiful on-ramp into inner inquiry. Now I can understand myself with a lot more complexity. Now I can really diagnose some of my, my behaviors and why I'm doing what I'm doing. But if you go down even further, you can also get growth opportunities. Mm-hmm. So there's really two phases of functions. The first phase is just knowing they're a thing and learning them and understanding how they show up in people and within the self. And that's a many years long process for a lot of people. That's a project all by itself. But, and people stay there, by the way. Lots and lots and lots of people stay at that point to understand themselves, understand other people, and maybe just have maybe a leg up, right? But there's a second half to it, which is as I'm understanding these concepts in the system, I can also start to go, well, I have these functions, they don't have me. That's like the next aha or insight if a person allows themselves to get there, which is that these are actually my functions. I'm not theirs, right? It's not that the functions are a higher authority. So if I have them and they're mine and they're tools I can engage with, can I improve them? Can I make them better? Can I become better if I make them better? What would that look like?
Yeah. That transition from dichotomies to functions is so key because, and there's use for this, dichotomies is binary. I'm either a thinker or I'm a feeler. And people are like, well, I feel like I'm an ambivert, right? And they say this. We've recorded a podcast about ambiverts. Go listen to it. Go search on our website, personacker.com. You can find ambivert if you want to learn more. But basically what the shift from dichotomies into functions, cognitive functions, does for us is it takes it from either or dichotomous thinking to it's both paradoxical thinking. Mm-hmm. It's I'm an introvert and an extrovert. It's just which am I leading with in the world? I'm a sensor and an intuitive. Which one am I leading with in the world? It gives much more fidelity to the complexities because we aren't just one thing or the other. That would not be a complete human. So I think this paradox thinking that comes at the function level is really powerful. And holding the tension of paradoxes with opposing cognitive functions and balancing those can be a lifetime of work, of growth work. And now we really start to see advice and prescription enter the field.
Mm-hmm. And I mentioned before, when it comes to learning the system, not being able to identify one's best fit type in the early phases can sometimes be a disadvantage in learning the system because most of us use ourselves as the control for understanding. But later on, it can be a massive benefit. And the reason why is you know through your own journey that you can't oversimplify any of this, that it's actually quite complex. And on top of it, if a person is really struggling to find their best fit type, they'll run into this concept that I don't think everybody runs into, which is it's not what I can do. It's what I'm compelled to do. It's not what's available to me. It's what I can't stop grabbing and using as a tool because it's my preference. It's my default.
Or when all other resources are removed from me, I'm at my lowest self. What is the fallback going to be? What function or what application, what am I going to be doing when all other excess or abundance of resources removed?
That's right. Exactly. So it becomes this matter of really watching yourself, really understanding yourself interfacing with the outside world, the behaviors, the defaults, all of those things that you just can't shut off. And that's why a lot of times when we make type descriptions to people, I'll hear people go, well, I can do that too. I can do that too. I mean, you describe all 8 functions and a person's going to say, I can do that too. I can do that too all the way through. and that's because they're right. We all can do all 8, but not all of us feel a powerful pre-wired compulsion to do certain things. And when we look at people who feel a pre-wired inclination to do these things regardless of circumstance or situation, like you said, under-resourced or, relaxing or, hard at work or whatever, there are 4 functions. John would call them egosyntonic, which basically means these are the ones that we most identify with as our ego. And we can't stop doing them. We just can't stop. And so being able to do something is different than feeling a compulsion to do something. Well, now we're entering a world of understanding things like compulsions. That's a totally different game than, as an ENTP, here's my little cartoon icon holding a beaker or whatever, right? Compulsions, being unable to stop doing something, leaning on, tools when I'm under-resourced. We're now in a whole world of self-inquiry, which gives access to fantastic information, fantastic ways to increase in consciousness about the self. And so people who have thrashed around their type, they're the ones that get to this piece of information faster than everybody else because they've spent so much time going, I can do that, I can do that, I can do that. And then eventually they go, oh, but I must do this. And then when you watch somebody in their must do this skill set, they're outclassing everybody else. It's not like I'll see extroverted thinking people think they're extroverted feeling because they're also nice people who want to do nice things for others.
Yeah.
And they'll go, I can do extroverted feeling things. But when you really watch somebody who is a master of extroverted feeling or harmony, it's not just getting things done on behalf of other people. It's a wordless glue of interconnectivity that extroverted thinking couldn't tap into if it wanted to. Yeah. Right. And so, and vice versa, there are certain things that are unavailable to extroverted feeling. And that's how all the functions work. There are elements that we can tap into because these are just elements of life, but there are things that are kind of inaccessible to us because only people who are pre-wired for that get the opportunity. They get the time in the game, right? They clock the hours to access this higher echelon of capacity within their function set.
Yeah.
And so now type is more than just the stereotypes. now they're like growth and developmental levels. Now they're compulsions and diagnosis of behaviors. Now they're, this is why I keep doing this thing over and over and over and can't stop. Now, how do I do it better? They are abilities for us to access our psyche unlike most any other tool that I've personally ever run into.
Yeah.
And that's the next phase. The next phase is deep, personal, conscious inquiry into the self. And that's when you start heading towards that mastery level, right? That's when you start heading towards the, these are just colors that are smushing into each other, not these dark lines.